Good afternoon, gang. It is Friday the 13th. How are you guys doing today? Thank you. Yes, it is also my birthday. Thank you all. We are going to dive in and take a look at what is happening in the market today. So we're going to start by looking at the overall market here first. Let me grab some charts here for you. And I'm going to begin with the daily time frame. So on the daily, we've been pushing back into the zone of those prior highs. We're basically on wave 2 on the upside here. And as those of you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've been watching this movement pretty closely because it was at a point where it could really do kind of anything. It could easily have gone into a longer base, pushed up, kind of gone into more of a trading range. So it really came down to what was happening on the smaller time frames to help lead that direction. And on the smaller time frames, we've just seen this continually pushing up to the upside. We're coming into some good resistance here. Previous highs, we don't quite have a measured move here at this point, but we are coming into those previous high levels. So we're at a good level for congestion to continue to increase as we go into next week. Can easily go back and forth more at this point. We're already seeing that happening intraday. It's actually pretty messy on the intraday charts, especially here today. See good chopping coming around. It looks like my chart is not updating here. Hold on one second. Let's get this updated for today. Got yesterday's action. We have the chop, but let's get today's here. I restarted my Ninja just before we came on. So it looks like we don't have today's data yet quite, but you can see going into the end of the day yesterday, that choppiness. And heading into today's session, we've really just continued that. It actually looks like a kind of a really big, long head and shoulders on the intraday charts because this went down and then we've got move here and then the breakdown. So continuing to do that chop on the daily charts. Just a really large head and shoulders on like the 15-minute time frame. There we go. Now you can see it. So pretty nice breakdown as we started the day, and now we're back into the choppiness again. Came right up to the 76.4% Fibonacci extension on the daily time frame. So didn't quite make it up to that 100%, and I don't really know if it's going to be able to the way that it is acting. It's just really struggling in here. We even have the makings that this could do shallow avalanche type of action just because of how it has pulled back more gradually here compared to the upside. So this can go into a longer range. It could even go into a shallow avalanche and try to break down like that. The 500 tick, 4,000 tick, all of this range here is really more compatible with more of this sideways, slower type of action. So we head out and complete the day. I'm going to go pull up the Russell here next. Russell also at good resistance, also larger time frames where we're just stuck in this range here. We've got this, pretty exhausted move here. I'm going to show you the 240. Talked about this yesterday a little bit as well. We had the Phoenix coming off of the 2B, which is a little bit of a momentum reversal too, except we've got the tail over here. Phoenix 1, 2, 3, and then this has a 1, 2, 3 also. So that exhausted the trend and it makes it more at a widening up zone on the 240-minute chart. So it's easier to go and do a lot more of that back and forth action on the 240-minute at this point. Going to get some of the other charts up here. I'm going to have a little bit of a shorter session here today. I've been a little bit under the weather this week. Had a really crazy severe allergic reaction to just aspirin of all things, and still trying to get over that. So if I'm a little bit more mellow, that's what's going on here. The Russell also could have that potential for a cup with handle type of formation, just on a larger time frame. Just the way it has this rounding off at lows, it has that bigger trading range going on. So that could easily go into a handle over there. Wheat, we are coming off of a momentum reversal on wheat. Very similar action to what we saw on the Russell there, where it had the Phoenix, and then you're kind of continuing to push up here. This has a lot of resistance over here that it can easily still keep trying to push up into. Here's the daily chart on wheat. This is that resistance zone that we're looking at over here. So right into support from the 2B zone. Two-wave move down, shift in momentum, kind of coming up here. So we're coming into some good resistance here on wheat, at least short term. Longer term, this could still do another second wave up here. Just need to get some sort of reaction here on this. So there's not like a big, larger time frame setup for this. S&Ps, you can see the choppiness on the S&P. Good, strong, major resistance on the daily chart on the S&P 500 here. Kind of doing a little bit of a momentum-esque type of reversal at this high. This could go into an avalanche at this point. It's really going to come down to smaller time framed momentum changes here, really, at this point going forward. We had a nice 2B here this morning, good two-wave move back up. It's really just going back and forth. Not any major pattern forming. Look at some of the Forex pairs. A lot of the market just is in like a holding pattern right now. Kind of the zone of pain type of thing going on. Just want to be a lot more cautious on larger time frame outlooks, because smaller time frames can shift things around pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you're not just looking at something that's setting up on one time frame, but you're double checking it against the others, especially right now. Aussie dollar looks a lot like how that S&P is holding at the highs. So really not really seeing anything here. We've got a two-wave measured move on the Aussie on the 30-minute. So you're at good resistance here, and today probably going to widen up at this point. Nothing new for a decent intraday setup here. Could go for a 2T. That would help turn things kind of around. Again, give you another intraday short setup. The dollar yen is coming into some pretty good resistance. Nice slowdown in momentum as it's coming in there on the 240-minute chart here. So this should start to widen up too. gets up there, we should see some pretty good flush action on the downside. I don't see a reversal pattern quite yet, but it is coming into a good zone for them to start happening. You can see the smaller one here. This is a really beautiful one in the overnight trading, where we had that really pretty 2T overnight. So that's the type of pattern you're going to start to see more and more of. We had the momentum reversal over here. So as we come into that larger daily resistance, we should see a lot more of this type of action here. This intraday on the dollar yen still looks to like it can go a little bit higher. You got a little bit of that cup with handle there. You got the measured move hitting on the last portion of the cup, but that can still creep up into that upper zone there. Pound dollar, short-term impulse move resistance here. You can see that just by looking at some of the previous impulse moves that have about that same amount of momentum to it. So just some short-term exhaustion here on the 240. Larger time frame, let's look at the weekly. We haven't been seeing a lot of changes going on in Forex and bigger picture over the last couple of months. Things are just kind of smooth. The pound dollar is one where we have had some bigger time frame patterns. So we've got the nice two-wave measured move here on the weekly support, and we're on that second move up. So this has actually a good amount of room for this to keep heading higher. Oops, sorry about that. Let me close this. So that is our weekly time frame. I'm going to go back to the daily. So I would still be looking for further upside on the pound here. Really, this is something that can increase momentum even compared to this downside move. We could see this continue to increase momentum because of what was happening on that weekly chart. So currently at resistance levels, like the short-term resistance here, there's a better chance it's going to be more of a chop type of reaction and not really strong reversals. The pound dollar, or sorry, the US Canadian dollar here, we are at resistance here. Got a measured move. This is actually a good location to look for intraday corrections on this. Let's see what's the larger time frame here. Daily chart could still push up higher. These are kind of tricky when it's like this because you're in the middle of this range here. So sometimes this resistance from where that breaks down, this is such a short drop compared to over here. So a lot of times this resistance can just serve as a pivot point where it can go back lower again. So even though the momentum is really strong back up into that zone, it's not necessarily sustainable. But we have seen cases where it will go up to a slightly higher high. So you guys know from our League of Traders Live, our classes where our second chance entries, this is an example of where one of those can happen, where it just has a single wave push up back into that resistance zone, and then it continues. So this is a possibility here at this point, even though that momentum was stronger up into that zone. So here on the 240-minute, you're on wave 2 on the upside here. So even here, we could sometimes see that pivot and try to turn back around again. It's going to be a higher risk trading zone, more advanced trading zone. We saw on the smaller intraday chart that it was a good zone for reversals and corrections. You can see a 2T here. And on the 30-second chart, you can see that 2T really well as also. So these are things where when you get into them using that smaller time frame setup, you can keep such a tight stop that you really have a lot of room for it to play out where you're not really risking too much as long as you're getting in on that smaller time frame. Because you can protect part of your position really quickly and then just kind of let the rest of it go and see what happens with it. So those are the types of entries I really love to look for. It's basically like very, very, very little risk. Let's see, I think we did most of the main ones here. Gold is coming off of a two-wave move into lows, and today you're asking about gold on the larger time frames. Let me pull that up too on the bigger charts here. I'm just posting these over to Telegram so I can bring it over here. All right, so we'll pull up gold here in just a second. So peso here, really good example of that second chance type of move where it just comes right up into where that breakdown zone was here. And it did it with the shifting two-wave move, so really strong reaction here. This still has more downside as it pulls back down into this channel, and I do suspect that it's going to be able to get back down into there given the way it's trading right now. You have a nice example of a shallow avalanche on the 240-minute chart. That's been our pattern of the week here. See the two-wave correction here, and then how it pulls back up. It comes back up more than the 50%. You had the stronger move up with the 2T into the high here. And so this is a perfect example of a shallow avalanche, this 240-minute chart. So if you're wanting to look for, examples to put in your notebooks, take this 240-minute chart of the dollar peso. You can even drop down to smaller time frame here. You can see it on the 30-minute chart. This is a pretty textbook example of what they will look like. So you have that two-wave move back, and it kind of threatens like it's going to go and break up for another move higher, but instead you get the shift where the overall channel is like this, and then it breaks to the downside. So this one, getting into a tighter setup, you'd have to use maybe a tick chart. Then you get your really strong two-wave drop, and then the widening up. So it's pretty textbook there. Yes, pattern of the week. The POW. So this is a core one here. Let's see what our lira is doing. So we were following the Turkish lira. We had the momentum reversal. coming up into the target level for the momentum reversal. It's held that zone really well. So we're still seeing more weakness on this here. It doesn't look like it's going to be able to do a second wave up very easily at all, given the way the momentum is shifting. It's looking more prone to coming back down in here. All right, gold. I just had gold up on the smaller time frame because it had a really nice two-wave move. Let's see if I can grab that chart. Okay, so here's our larger time frame on gold. So you can see we have the Phoenix with the 1, 2, 3. So this is typically the widening up zone up here on gold. Here's our smaller time frame. So we have a two-wave drop. We're on the second wave. This was so strong on the downside. It can be harder for this to go and hit a measured move. So we're starting to see this kind of widen up and shift momentum again here, just like it did over in here. So here's your two-wave drop, kind of shifting momentum. And then intraday here, things are getting interesting too because we have a two-wave move here. And then in here we have a two-wave drop too. So you've got actually really good support here short term, but the momentum hasn't changed yet. The momentum on the larger time frames is still really strong. So here was that two-wave I was just showing you guys about, and it had the two-wave in here too. So it's kind of doing a little bit of a phoenix, but overall momentum is still slower because the larger time frame momentum was still really strong. So we're just kind of having more gradual reaction. There's a little bit more room on that larger time frame that it can kind of pull back down a little bit further. So we're kind of looking for this to pull down into this zone here. Just because this overall momentum on the 15-minute chart here is so strong, there's that room for this to kind of open up here and kind of pull in a little bit further. Grab some charts of oil for you. So here is the daily chart on oil. So you can see we're really kind of up in the air as to directionality on this oil. We had the two-wave move up, that sharp reversal with the avalanche, and then the 1, 2, 3, then the widening up, and then this is trying to go kind of into a two-wave move for a potential downside. We have that lower low in there in the middle. If we hadn't had that lower low, then the probability of a strong downside break would be much higher. But because we had that lower low, it means that things have a potential to roll over and turn back around. We're not seeing a strong potential for that yet because so far all of the upside attempts have been met with some pretty rapid downside movement. We are coming into a level where it's getting close to measured move level where we would usually see that breakdown zone try to occur. So we could see, another move or so up in this range before that happens. That would be the ideal zone for this to break down, really would be into October if it can manage to base out that long, kind of stay in that range for that long. But I don't know that is going to happen. We've just got to wait and see and keep an eye on this momentum. So here's the strong two-way move drop. This is the 240 minute. So we're exhausted on the short term just because this is pretty average for a lot of these impulse wave moves. Sometimes we'll see a little bit further, like you can see here, this one went for 3 waves. So sometimes we'll go a little bit further, but overall it's not going to be easy for this to just totally break through the lower end of that range with this type of drop. We would usually have to see something kind of shift the momentum out longer again to try to break it, because if it tries to break it now, it's more likely that it could pop back up into the range again, which would make sense given how much time we've got on that larger time frame. Here's the intraday, so you can see intraday 15 minute, it's a good level to try to break down, but it doesn't have a perfect setup because it has so many breakdowns already. So the more solid breakdowns you have in a row, the less likely the third time around is going to work as well. So we've got 1, 2, and it tries to go for 3, and it's just not working as well. Even though this is now going out longer, so if it can go out even longer, it can have a better breakdown, but it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle. Intraday here, this is the 20,000 tick chart. You can see it's still trying to hold up in here. We could get this pushing down, maybe even doing like a 2B to pull it back up into the range. That would be a good pattern to have here. Just kind of a 2B pulling back down, bounce it back up into that range again. That's what I would be looking for on this chart here. All right, you guys, I mentioned I was going to do a little bit of a shorter session here today. So I am going to wrap this up here now. I'm just still having reactions due to what happened here earlier this week. So I am going to get all of our sessions here this week put up onto our site so you guys can go back and review them. I am not sure with the zooming on size stuff, Jeff. I will have to look into that. Thank you guys. All right, have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and I am going to go rest up, and hopefully I will be back to myself next week. So everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back on Monday.